So, this is the new beginning, right? So, we are going to start modern India. Got it? You guys got the excess of 4 lectures? 4 video lectures? No? Fine, okay. Okay, so modern Indian history. Got my point. So, like as you do know that this is the section part A, sorry, paper 2, part A. So when it comes to the modern Indian history, instead of telling you something, today I'm in a mood to ask you something. Okay? So there are several questions in my mind, and in fact I'll start with those questions and then I'll come up with some sort of content for this. When it comes to modern Indian history, I have already given you some of the questions, like not some of the questions, the syllabus question analysis, and as per this syllabus question analysis, you can actually figure out that what kind of questions are being asked from this part. Because whenever it comes to ancient, medieval, modern, have you all got the, yeah, okay, fine, today it will be provided to you, right? So, when it comes to the 4 sections of Indian history, okay, I must tell you that they are very different in nature. If you treat them equally, in that case your score won't be very good. So that's why you have to understand the requirement for all the 4 papers differently, and only once you understand them differently, you'll be able to write. First of all, you'll be able to grab the right content for those portions, and undoubtedly you'll be able to present a good answer of those questions. Those questions, I must say. When it comes to modern Indian history, there are 3 things that you should understand here. Modern is one word, Indian is the second word, and the history is the third word. So how many of you really understand the word Indian? How many of you are Indian here? सर इधर वाले नहीं हैं. कहाँ से बिलोंग करते? पाकिस्तान से, नेपाल से, बांग्लादेश से, किधर से? You all are Indian. But if I'll ask the real meaning of nationalism, I believe most of you must not be able to define nationalism properly. And it's not only you. Even the scholars have faced difficulties while defining nationalism because it's a very complicated term. So I'm just leaving this particular term right now. I'm not trying to define nationalism because one topic that we are going to cover in modern itself, that's called as nationalism, and there I'll try to disclose that what might be the possible meanings of nationalism or what might be the best way of defining nationalism. So I do not know more than the scholars, and as I told you that most of the scholars themselves have been struggling with this question, that what is nationalism, okay? What is Indian nationalism or nationalism? And in fact, I could say only one thing here, that instead of defining or instead of defining nationalism, most of the time they have actually discussed the process of the coming of nationalism, right? And this process of nationalism may be different in different regions. So when you talk about Indian nationalism, undoubtedly it has followed a different route or path for getting nationalism. But if we'll compare it with the British nationalism, in that case, this is coming in a different way. So there are many different ways through which ultimately any society is reaching to that idea of nationalism. So we won't discuss much about that. Okay. Now the second part is history. Okay. When it comes to history, now this is a very important term, and in fact, like we have just tried to understand a little bit about the term history, right? History does not mean the study of past. This is a very childish definition that history is merely the study of past. History is not the study of past. Rather, we have been learning about some events that have happened in past, the events which are important due to some reasons. Now, what is the importance of these events? These events were as such which had really given good impact over the society. And when I say society, there might be many aspects of society. It may be political aspect, economic aspect, social aspect, religious aspect, the cultural aspect. So any event which is leaving some impact over these aspects, either one of the aspects, or maybe more than one aspect, in that case that event becomes important to us. That's first thing. And the second thing, this event is being studied by historians only by historians with the help of certain sources. So any particular writing which is missing these agendas, like that could not be included in history. So first of all, there should be a consciousness for the events. Every event is not part of history. Only certain events are part of history. Why? Because they are actually leaving some impact over the various aspects of society. That's the reason because of what we calculate or we say that this is important event, right? That's one thing. And the second thing, the events should be studied by the scholars, those who are known as historians, with the help of certain sources. So anything which is missing in this particular description, in that case, it cannot be counted as history. So when the historians do study the sources and then afterwards they are coming up with some sort of writings, then it must be called as history. This is how we define history. Got my point? So that's one way, and this is how we can define history. Now these are a couple of things we had discussion over it. Now since we are going to begin with the modern Indian history, and that's how now the next question is coming to you. What is modern? Why do we call it modern Indian history? Asan sawal. I think this is such a term that you have been using a lot in your day-to-day life. If a girl is wearing a jeans, modern लड़की है, ठीक है. If a girl is wearing साड़ी, क्या बोलते हैं? Traditional या फिर classical है. Are we using it without any meaning, or we have been using it with some meaning, or there is a meaning behind it? Why do we call somebody, or why do we call something as modern? Since we are going to start with modern Indian history, and that's why we have to understand these questions. First, what is modern? कुछ भी अंडरस्टैंडिंग तो होगी सबके पास, कुछ ना कुछ तो मॉडर्न का एक परसेप्शन तो होता ही. वेस्टर्न इन्फ्लुएंस मतलब देखिए, वो जो हेजिमनी है वेस्टर्न वाली, वेस्ट वाली अभी तक बरकरार है. आपको लगता है कि वेस्ट वाले लोग मॉडर्न हैं. अच्छा चलिए मैं एक कहानी सुना देता हूँ इस चीज़ को ख़त्म करने के लिए, ठीक है. देयर वाज ए फेलो, हिज नेम वाज, कुछ भी रख लेते हैं, ठीक है. लेट्स से हिज नेम वाज एक्स, ठीक है. ही हैड ए डॉटर, वाई, एंड दे आर कमिंग फ्रॉम हिंदू रिलीजन. कहानी 2014 के बाद हो तो ज़्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है, ठीक है. तो ये सब तो आप समझते हैं, तो थोड़ा सिचुएशन कॉम्प्लिकेटेड था. देन एक्स agreed for this marriage without any resistance. ठीक है, we'll go for it. But X has a condition, and what is this condition? That the marriage will take place as per the Hindu rituals. Now, where will you place X? A traditional fellow, a modern fellow? Confused one? नहीं, मुझे तो लगता है कि he is very clear about his thinking. Very clear about his thinking. नहीं, मॉडर्न और ऑर्थोडॉक्स दोनों एक साथ नहीं हो सकते हैं. या तो मॉडर्न है या ऑर्थोडॉक्स है. हैं? आप लोग, you guys are like under well influence of transition, ठीक है. Now this is the time to come out from the idea of transition, ठीक है. Right? Okay, let me define. X is undoubtedly a very progressive person. Why? Because he does not believe in this, religious system or caste system as such. It may be story, may be anything, okay. But the point is that that person is definitely having some sort of affection, or let's say love for his culture. That's it. So this person is a progressive person. Undoubtedly, is having some sort of infatuation for his culture. That's it. But like since he agreed for this marriage without any resistance, and that's why he must be considered as a modern or progressive person. So how do we call it modern? Like a person wearing dhoti, like that person if wearing dhoti, but he agreed for this marriage, in that case you are going to place him modern. So I think that outfit, or let's say the outer look, does not define that whether the person is modern or not. A person wearing dhoti and sari could be very much modern. Okay? So that's not the definition of modern. So then what is modern?
Modern is with scientific temperament, sir.
Scientific?
Temperament, rational behavior.
Rational behavior, okay. What else?
There is a way of asking questions, not believing exactly. Philosophy की जगह पे question पूछना, rationalize करना.
ठीक है, I think you are picking up the right term, but you are presenting in a very confused way. ठीक है. Yes, the term is right. Anything which is anything which is rational, that's modern, that's it. ठीक है? Anything rational. When I'm saying anything rational, it means that it may be any political institution. If it is rational, then it is indicator of modernity. If your way of thinking is rational, it's the indicator of modernity. If your, whatever you have been doing in this world, if it is rational, in that case it could be called as modern. That's it, very simple. So when the history has been divided into three parts or three phases basically, one is called as ancient, right? One which is called as medieval, and then next which is called as modern. You all know that this definition was not initially given for Indian history. Rather, it was divided by James Mill in a very biased way. That's called as Hindu Kal, Hindu period, the British, Muslim period, and the British period. That's how they have defined it. Got it? So basically, they have divided it into the James Mill precisely. He had divided the period of in the Indian history in Hindu period, Muslim period, and British period, which was not very much applicable in India. Look, this is a division which is universally being followed in all the parts of world, ancient, medieval, and modern. So if it is being followed universally, in that case you all have to understand one point, that there must be some logic behind it. It is not an irrational division of the history, rather there is a logic behind it. So when you enter from one phase to another phase, there should be some changes. Let's say when you enter from ancient to medieval, what is the most important change which does take place between this transition? Is feudalism. Got the point? And why there is so much debate regarding feudalism, whether feudalism was there in India or not, I think that remains in this particular idea. If feudalism was there in India, it means that India got a transition from ancient to medieval in this early medieval period. Got my point? And if feudalism was not there, in that case, that was not a transition. And in fact, this is the reason because of what in the recent times you must have noticed that early medieval period initially was included in medieval period. Nowadays it is being included in the ancient times. Read all the books of Upinder Singh, then Ranveer Chakravarti. They all have started writing on early medieval period, because once you deny the idea of feudalism, it means that it was not the entry of medievalism. Rather, some changes were there, but it was more in continuity with the ancient times, and that's why it's better to place it in the ancient rather than medieval, right? So ये confusing है. So that's why if you'll see the UPSC, in that case, there are a couple of questions being asked from early medieval period in ancient, and couple of questions are in medieval. Specifically Chola and onwards included in medieval, and till 10th century, the questions are being asked in ancient period. So it's actually this confusion. So when you move from, or when you actually go for the transition from ancient to medieval, so it's feudalism which is considered to be one of the most important indicator. And mind you, the moment I'm saying feudalism, you cannot take it in this way. It was just a mode of production. When I say feudalism, it was a political system, it was an economic system, it was a social system, and to some extent I can say it was even a religious system also. But yes, first three are definitely correct, that political, economic and social systems, right? And that's why feudalism remains as one of the basic structure of the society. And if really any society is entering into feudalism, that was a remarkable shift from ancient. And that's why we say that it was a new era. So in the same way, once we enter from medieval to modern, some changes must be there. Because if changes are not there, in that case, what is the need to change the period? Then we must continue the continue the study of same thing. But we are not doing it. We are changing the time. So we are changing the time because certain changes are there. Transformation, okay, is there. Got it? So let's understand that what are the changes, because of what we have been calling it modern. First, changes, right? So first of all, I can say one of the greatest indicator of modernity could be noticed in polity, and simply I can say rule of law. है ना? Rule of law is one of the greatest indicator of modernity. मान लीजिए there was a king, ठीक है, and there was a king called as, तो कोई भी नाम ले लेते हैं, किसी का नाम ले लेने से कोई बुरा मान जाएंगे ऊपर बैठ के, हम नाम नहीं लेते हैं, ठीक है, हम कह देते हैं एक्स है, एक रूलर है, कैसा रूलर है, मिडीवल टाइप्स का रूलर है. अब मान लो उनको इनकी शक्ल पसंद नहीं आई इनकी, और बोला कि इसको बुलाओ, हाथी के नीचे कुचलवा दो. कोई मना कर सकता है? कर सकता है? यही उत्कर्ष खुद भी नहीं बोलेंगे कि नहीं सर ये तो गलत है, यू कांट डू दिस टू मी, ठीक है, आप ऐसा कैसे कर सकते हैं मुझे, ठीक है। तो आप ऐसा नहीं बोल सकते, क्यों? क्योंकि दैट इज़ द medieval times, and in medieval times the only source for law also was the sultan, badshah or king. But is it possible in the modern times when the head of the state is not liking utkarsh, even though he cannot like pass such kind of instructions, because he does have some sort of fundamental rights, ठीक है, and some natural rights as well, and actually as per the natural rights he does have all the rights to live, और ये राइट इनका उत्कर्ष से कोई छीन नहीं सकता है, ठीक है। So this is rule of law. Now I think it's not very tough to understand कि in India undoubtedly the rule of law was not there. But what example I gave you, आप don't take it very seriously, because no ruler is this kind of having this kind of arbitrary attitude as such. किसी को भी नीचे को चलवा, justification was always there, ठीक है। And this is just an example to make you understand. Even the rulers like Aurangzeb, Akbar and any other ruler could not have done this. Okay? And in fact, I say that in the medieval period, like people were more having more liberal approach. In medieval period, when I'll discuss about the nature of state, I'll tell you one thing, that normally as per that nature of state, what happened if somebody revolted, okay, against the ruler, then was he killed? No. He was defeated and then again assimilated into the system. देखा है ना? Mostly this is what happened. Like mostly this is what happened, that somebody revolted. आज के टाइम पे आप समझ रहे कितनी बड़ी बात हो गई, आप एंटी नेशनल हो गए। अगर आप रूलर के खिलाफ रिवोल्ट करते तो आप एंटी नेशनल हो गए, तो आपके लिए तो कैपिटल पनिशमेंट या जो है इस टाइप की पनिशमेंट, इट्स नॉट ए बिग डील एज सच, इट्स क्वाइट पॉसिबल, मतलब इट कुड बी गिवन, बट स्टिल इट वाज नॉट बीइंग गिवन बिकॉज देयर वाज ए लिबरल रूल इवन इन द medieval times. If Balban was doing something awkward, and that's why it is being discussed, that Balban never forgave his enemies, and he always preferred to kill them. Otherwise it was not a normal tendency or the general attitude as such. So even in the medieval times this kind of attitude did not prevail, but undoubtedly it was not rule of law also. This is also true. So everything was depending on the wish of the ruler, that what exactly he wanted to do, he had been doing everything, ठीक है। Now rule of law, but the point is this, अच्छा हम पहले इसकी बात कर लेते हैं। This is one indicator. Any place, any region which is having a rule of law, that could be one indicator of modernity, right? Okay. Second, let's talk about economy. Now, economy must be also understood in a very different way. Earlier, the economy was completely free from any kind of state intervention. State was never intervening in economy. I do not know how many of you have really studied medieval, but if you'll study medieval, you'll find state was least interested in economy. It does not mean that they were least interested, matlab they were not having any interest, they were not trying to do, or they were not trying to get some income from the economy. It's not true. Undoubtedly, the land revenue was most important source of income, but they had fully realized the importance of trade and commerce also, and that's why what facilities they required, the rulers had been trying to provide those facilities in order to collect some tax, tariff, or custom duties and all. So it was a source of income, but state was never trying to regulate it. ठीक है, such as state कैसे regulate कर सकते थे? Like state could have monopolized something. ठीक है, state had the power, arbitrary तो है ही, तो state could have monopolized it, such as it has happened in couple of cases during the period of Shahjahan when he monopolized the tobacco cultivation. ठीक है, उसने कर लिया और उसने एक गुजरात के ट्रेडर को दे दिया, बोला कि अभी आप जो भी टोबैको होगा या ओपीएम होगा आप उसको सेल करेंगे, तो इससे मोनोपोली. बट दीज आर रेयर एग्जांपल्स. मोस्टली थ्रू आउट द वर्ल्ड यू कैन फाइंड दैट स्टेट वाज नॉट इंटरवीनिंग इन द इकोनॉमी, एंड यू ऑल नो दैट इकोनॉमी डज हैव इट्स ओन principles, and economy is being regulated by its own principles. But there was a period coming when state had started intervening in the economy, and specifically happened after the coming of mercantilism. So once mercantilism started, mercantilism was there earlier also, even before 14th century mercantilism was there. Trade and commerce was going on, but it was not mercantilism. Mercantilism as a policy coming in 14th century and onwards, and this mercantilism had been asking the state ki if it is required any state intervention, in that case state is ready. A state should be ready for this. And in fact, when you talk about colonization, it was nothing but the impact of this kind of mercantilism. Colonization क्या है? बहुत simple principle था. आप किसी एक नई ज़मीन पे जाओ and try to exploit that land. If it is happening without any kind of intervention or any kind of application of power? Very good. And if you feel that some power is required or some power or some force should be applied in order to exploit the region in a better way, they have been going for the colonization. That's the simple funda. The companies were present in India since 1600, but the colonization process started only after mid of 18th century. Why? Because after that they felt it is necessary to colonize the regions, because once they have colonized it, in that case they would be able to exploit the Indian regions in a better way, and that's how this process got changed. So this is how it was there. Okay. So economy is coming under the state regulation. I won't say that this is the final phenomena of the modern, because over the period you all know that there is a new perspective coming that's called as the laissez-faire policy, or the Adam Smith's policy, where he asked actually the states should not intervene. That's coming on 1775. Okay. That is the period. So so state intervention is coming, and later on some new ideas are also coming, but in the beginning this remains one of the biggest indicator of modernity, right? Okay. Third, society. Now society is, yes, there should be some indicator of modernity even in society also. And this is the most important thing, because when you say a society is modern, so I think it should not be calculated only with respect to polity and economy. It should be concerned more with the society. So any society which is rational in thinking, that's considered to be a modern society. Okay. Any society which is rational in thinking, that must be giving lesser importance to religion. एक सोसाइटी जिसमें रिलीजन बहुत डोमिनेट करने लगेंगे, ठीक है, वो सोसाइटी कभी रैशनल नहीं हो सकती है. कोई आइडिया है? बाकी आप समझदार हैं. A society which is giving more importance to religion, and that's why sometimes I am worried, ठीक है. A society which is becoming more religious, that society at any point of time cannot become rational, ठीक है. तो आप लोग मान लीजिए बहुत रिलीजियस हैं, ठीक है, रोज़ क्लास में लेट आता, बोलते हो भगवान कृष्ण मिल गए थे रास्ते में, उनसे कुछ बातें होने लगी, ठीक है, तो आप ही लोगों के बारे में बातें हो रही थी, किसका निकलेगा यूपीएससी, किसका नहीं निकलेगा. तो आप अभी क्या करेंगे? हंसेंगे. अरे ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा मेरे सामने नहीं हंसेंगे, पीछे से जाके हंसेंगे, ठीक है. यार क्या बेवकूफ़ बनाते हैं, ऐसा थोड़ी होता है, ऐसा थोड़ी होता है. So try to get my point. Society is also becoming very rational, or any society which does have a rational approach, that's considered to be another indicator of modernity, right? So when you find that these changes are there, then only you can place any particular region as or any particular period as a modern period. But do you really think that once the modernity appears in Europe, in the same time the modernity must have appeared in India also? Because this is all about certain features. So it's not necessary that if one region is having certain modern features, it means that other regions also simultaneously started having the modern features. Okay? And it's one of the biggest problem with most of the students, those who have been studying history. I have noticed that they never bother for these kind of questions. उनको लगता है कि modern is more about a period. Modern is not about phenomena. Modern is about phenomena, not about the period. It is quite possible that in Europe it is coming somewhere in 16th century, right? After Enlightenment, you can place Europe in modern period, right? Or you can actually say that modernity has entered into Europe. But in the case of India, you all know that 16th century, what was happening in 16th century? What was happening in what was happening in India? It was Akbar who was ruling in India, okay? And then Akbar was followed by Jahangir and Shahjahan. These are the people. And when Akbar, Jahangir and Shahjahan had been ruling till Aurangzeb, in fact, I must say that it was purely falling in the category of medieval, right? By no chance it can be actually placed in the modern period, right? And that's why like modernity is a phenomena, and this phenomena must not be noticed only in one specific period or one specific period. Rather, we can say in different places, if we'll find the features of modernity do come, in that case, in that case, we can say that modernity has entered into any particular region. So when I'm saying modern Indian history, so you have to first understand the beginning of modernity in India, and then only you can understand the modern Indian history. That's the first thing. I would like to discuss in today's class. Okay? Now the point is that when did this modernity start in India? With the in the mid of 18th century. Okay? कुछ खास बताएंगे आप? थोड़ा रोशनी डालेंगे? 1803 when? Okay, fine. Battle of Plassey, 1757, right? 23 July 1757, right? ठीक. और कुछ? इंडियन रेनेसेंस वो कब था? स्टार्टिंग इन 19th सेंचुरी. कोई डेट वेट नहीं है उसका? हाँ? थोड़ा सा. सॉरी? सेंचुरीज में होते हैं. यार इतना कुछ बताने के बाद भी वही गलती मत करो, ठीक है? When somebody is asking that when did modernity start, so do you guys really believe कि one day you slept in medieval, next day you woke up in the modern? आप सोए होंगे तो धोती पहन के सोएंगे, सवेरे उठे तो जीन्स पहने हुए मिले, ठीक है? ऐसा हुआ होगा क्या? नहीं. So why to express the ideas in this way? Do you really think when I'm saying that modernity is all about ideas, how come you can think also that modernity could have appeared in one day in India, let's say in 1 year in India? You can even ask the question that has modernity entered into India or not, even right now also. So I think you can't answer in this way that modernity happened or modernity appeared in India during this particular period. These are the parameters. Let us try to justify. Let us try to evaluate ki how come the modernity entered into India one by one. So first it comes to rule of law. So let's try to understand it in Indian context. Indian context. ठीक है? So in Indian context, rule of law, from where you find the beginning of rule of law? Sorry? 18? Why do you feel that 1860 it was the beginning of rule of law? IPC. Okay. So rule of law, do you really believe that rule of law is all about the legal system? No. This is just one part of it. Okay? Charter Act, which one? सबसे पहला वाला कब आया था? 1773. वो तो regulating act था वो. And 1793 regulating Charter Act was not there. And in fact, the act which got passed on 1600, that was also a Charter Act only. ठीक है? So Charter Act had a longer history. But I think when you talk about the rule of law, that started happening from 1773. Regulating Act. But again, I'm not saying that 1773 Regulating Act actually started the rule of law in India. I can say the series of acts passed by British Parliament. And now Indian administration was being run as per those acts passed by British Parliament. Understand what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say, that there are series of acts which got passed by British Parliament. And when I'm saying Parliament, that means that there is a constitutional body. And that body is passing certain acts, and Indian administration is being run as per those acts. So it is actually including Regulating Act, then Pitt's India Act, then Charter Act, and so on. Okay. So like this process started on 1773, but I'm not saying it completed. It completed itself. Rather, it was a journey. And if I'll ask that is the constitution being followed in India even right now also, in a complete manner? Undoubtedly no. So it's a process which is still going on. But we can say ki yes, like 1773 onwards, you can find certain acts got passed by British Parliament, and these acts were instructing the colonial administration in India how to rule over India. Okay? And they were gradually getting into a system which was sounding very logical. Okay? There are certain bodies, Governor General in Council. That body was making decisions. So there was no one person like Sultan or Badshah making, or Nawab making the decision. Rather, there is a body. And this body was further expanded also. And you all know that later on, the executive was separated from legislative. So 1 plus 4, ठीक है? That's the executive. 1 plus 4 plus 6, अभी नहीं समझ में आ रहा होगा शायद. That's the legislative. ठीक है? So they are getting all these systems in India, most importantly. So this is how we can say that Indian administration was now going through a change, and in fact theoretically at least they accepted that everybody does have some rights. Okay? Everybody does have some rights, like maybe it's fundamental rights, it's natural rights or whatever it is, but they accept it. And in fact, this is the reason they have been continuously trying to justify their rule in India, and they never accepted that they have colonized India. They always said that they have been ruling on India according to a democratic principle. That's it, right? So at least they had been pretending pretending that they are ruling over India according to certain laws and regulations. Okay? And that's how we can say that from this particular point you can find that the beginning of modernity could be noticed in India. Only one segment. Okay? I'm not saying in all the segments, only in one segment you can find the beginning of that, right? Okay. Then it comes to second, state intervention. Now the state intervention started in India, like Mughals were least interested in this. Okay. By the time of 18th century, the Indian Nawabs started taking some interest, such as because they realized that it could be a major source of income, and that's why they have been taking some interest. But still it was not like that, except Tipu Sultan, nobody ever tried to get any kind of monopoly over the things. Tipu Sultan started a company and then he gave the monopoly to this company. वो ठीक है, दूसरी कहानी है, ये सब हम मॉडर्न में कवर करेंगे. But state intervention started with the coming of or with the British East India Company coming to power. Now they have started using their political power to benefit them as a trading power. So no tariff, no custom duty, zero. ठीक है. And you all know that when the Indians are exporting the manufactured stuff, there was a great amount of tariff imposed over it. When the British products were imported in India, 0% tariff. Okay? So this is what called as regulations. Okay? So this is what called as a kind of regulation, okay, or a kind of intervention. That's like this. Okay? So that could be noticed again after 1750s or mid of 18th century, I must say. Then it comes to society. From which particular point of time you find that Indian society also became rational?
It's still not rational.
It's still not rational. I do convince with you, okay? But the point is that when you are teaching, sometimes you need to fake something, okay? You need to pretend something. I'm pretending also, okay? Abhi bata dijiye.
With the coming of socio-religious
Socio-religious reform movement, okay? Yes, I think the socio-religious reform movement, religious reform movement, and that happened somewhere in the first half of 19th century. Now you understand the point. In Indian society, there are certain practices such as after the death of husband, the wife is going to commit sati. If she is not committing suicide, in that case she needs to lead a life as a widow, and that widowhood wala life was very dangerous. Okay? You all know that they were supposed to shave their hair, they are supposed to wear only the white sari and only sari, no blouse and other thing. They could not eat the spicy food. They cannot join any kind of ritual, festival, any kind of gathering as such. Okay? All these conditions were there. Okay? The girls should not be sent for the education. This was also one thing. Girl education, child marriage, and all these. Now, can you justify them? All these systems? By any chance, can you justify them? I can justify them. Okay? By giving you only one logic. Religion permits or religion asks everyone to do so, and that's why it should be done. Justification. That's the only justification for it. If you try to justify it rationally, you won't be able to justify it. बाकी तो दुनिया में जो भी justify करना है तो आप कर दीजिए. Religion कहता है हमें ऐसा करने के लिए तो justification हो गया. तो कभी बाकी कहीं पे भी किसी डिबेट में अगर आप फंस जाते हैं, ठीक है, तो घबराने का नहीं, ठीक है, बस रिलीजन का सहारा लीजिए, निकल जाएंगे आप. ठीक है, तो किसी भी डिबेट में पार्टिसिपेट करने से भिड़िए मत, अभी तो बेस्ट टाइम है. ठीक है, तो ये ऐसा है. ठीक है, सो सोसाइटी, so when Indian society was not rational at all, ठीक है, because all these practices were there, but then some reformers are coming and they have question on these practices, कि why to commit suicide. And then a person asks questions, Raja Ram Mohan Rai. Then some person, like some ask question on the widowhood system and so on, right? So basically, I cannot say the any specific period, but I can say 19th century is known for many social reformation, and the social reformation itself was a rational movement. Got my point? And that's how we can say that the society is becoming rational here onwards. That's what we can say. Yes.
सर अगर इनिशियल पॉइंट की बात करना पड़े रिगार्डिंग सर रिफॉर्म्स सर तो क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज को भी अलाउ किया था रिफॉर्मेशन मूवमेंट से पहले ही वो लोग आने वो आ सकते थे।
नहीं, क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज तो देखिए, क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज के बहुत सारे वो हैं एजेंडाज हैं, ठीक है, या बहुत सारी बातें हैं। हम बात करेंगे क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज पे भी बात करेंगे हम। क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज आर एक्टिव इन इंडिया सिंस 1500 आई गेस, ठीक है, and mostly they were active in 16th and 17th century, and they were not English Christian missionaries, they were Dutch Christian missionaries, those who were very active, and they were not much into the reform sort of thing, okay? So their intention was very clear, they wanted conversion, and for conversion they had been doing some charitable works, but it was not reform, and they had been mostly working with the vulnerable people, tribals prefer करते थे हमेशा, क्योंकि उनको लगता था इनको आराम से, ठीक है, तो वो रिफॉर्म में नहीं कह सकते हम, ठीक है। सो दैट्स अबाउट द रैशनल मूवमेंट्स एंड देयर आर मेनी रिफॉर्मर्स दैट कुड बी इंक्लूडेड हियर, ठीक है। देन इट कम्स टू रिलीजन, अनडाउटेडली a society which is rational, that is definitely giving lesser importance to religion. But do you really think that religion, if a society is highly rational, in that case religion should be zero? But it does not happen, ठीक है। You know that religion always exists, but then how come we can justify that religion is though there right now also, but religion is not a hurdle in the rationalism, because now religion has has moved from the public domain to private domain, public to private domain. I never ask anybody questions so far, ठीक है, कि whether you go to temples or not, ठीक है, मैं आप मस्जिद जाते हैं या नहीं जाते, आप चर्च जाते हैं या नहीं जाते, वो आपका अपना डिस्क्रिप्शन है, ठीक है। आप जाता चाहते हैं आप जाइए, नहीं जाना चाहते नहीं जाना चाहिए, अब नहीं मत जाइए, ठीक है। दैट्स नॉट रिलेटेड टू मी, ठीक है। एंड इन फैक्ट आई थिंक इट्स अ बेटर डिसीजन नॉट टू डिस्कस द रिलीजन इन द पब्लिक प्लेसेस, ठीक है। सो रिलीजन वॉज देयर अर्लियर ऑल्सो, रिलीजन इज एग्जिस्टिंग और सर्वाइविंग इवन राइट नाउ ऑल्सो, but there is a change. Earlier the religion was there in the public domain, and you all know, not only in India, even in Europe also, religion was there in the public domain. You remember that what was the situation of Europe before French Revolution? The religion was making most of the decisions, okay? And in fact, like any crime that you have committed, after that you reach to the church, like Amitabh Bachchan, I have committed this crime, okay? अभी क्या है, तो फादर आपको एक लेटर लिख के देंगे, वो बोलेंगे इतना पैसा जमा करो और लेटर लेके जाओ, ठीक है। वो लेटर ले गए, फ्री हो गए। तो ऑर्थोडॉक्सी हर जगह है रिलीजन में, ऐसा नहीं कि ऑर्थोडॉक्सी इज देयर ओनली इन हिंदुइज्म और इस्लाम और इन अदर रिलीजन्स, इट इज देयर इन क्रिश्चियनिटी ऑल्सो, and these kind of orthodoxy could be noticed even in European context also. Yes, undoubtedly in India also the orthodoxy was there, but the moment the society is becoming rational, the religion has been shifted to the private domain, and now everybody is free to follow his or her own religion in his or her own way, and nobody is going to give you instruction that you are supposed to follow the religion in this way. This is an identity of a rational society. So when you say that you start finding all these features in India, in that case you can definitely say that modernity has started appearing in India. Now can we say a single period, a single year, even a decade also in which all these changes had started happening? No, I think it's impossible, right? And that's why what we say that these transformation in Indian context started happening from the mid of 18th century to mid of 19th century. Mid of 18th century to mid of 19th century. And mind you, there was a great confusion. There is a great confusion among the scholars as well, that which is the beginning point of this modernity in India. If you'll read the book of Bipin Chandra, in that case you can find, according to him, the modernity started in India somewhere with the social reformation movement. So the first topic he covers is social reformation movement. If you'll read the book of Sumit Sarkar, so formation of Congress is the beginning point of modernity in India for him. ठीक है? If you'll read the book of Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, he believes that middle of 18th century is considered to be the modern beginning of modernity in India, and that's how even the scholars do not have a kind of consensus on the beginning of modernity, but it was their own perception, and we are not supposed to be guided by a single author's perspective. Rather, we have to try to accommodate everyone, and that's how we can make a common definition for us. In between 18th century to 19th century, we can say that modernity had started coming up in India, and that's how it's coming, because we cannot go for any idea of any particular scholar, because they are not having any sort of consensus, as I told you. Here I would like to tell you one more thing. If you have really compared the syllabus of UPSC, specifically in general studies part, have you noticed your syllabus? You just see the syllabus of general studies, the modern India segment, the mains wala segment, and they have written from the middle of 18th century. And you just go and see, check out the previous syllabus. आप एक सोच के देखिए ना, आप simply कि अगर उनको syllabus लिखना था, they could have written modern India. They could have written only modern India, but they have written कि from the middle of 18th century. तो आपको क्या लगता है? Everything that UPSC does, that is very logical, and this is the reason because of what I respect UPSC a lot. ठीक है? बहुत professional service है उनकी. ठीक है? हर जगह प्रोफेशनलिज्म है, एक खाली मार्क्स देने को छोड़ के. ठीक है? तो हर जगह बहुत प्रोफेशनल रहते हैं वो लोग. मतलब ऐसा प्रोफेशनलिज्म मैंने देखा यूपीएससी के साथ भी, मेरा काफ़ी लंबा वास्ता रहा, तो मैंने देखा है कि इतना प्रोफेशनलिज्म किसी गवर्नमेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में थोड़ा मुश्किल है. ठीक है? तो यूपीएससी हर चीज़ को बहुत क्लैरिफाई करके देती है. And I still remember that syllabus earlier started from social reformation movement, and they have desperately pushed it back to middle of 18th century. Why? Because now, according to the scholars, the modernity did not start in 19th century, rather it started in 18th century only, and that's how they have categorically written there that from the middle of 18th century. So just see their attitude. In fact, if you see the next part also of the syllabus, that also carries some meaning. तो जीएस में तो उतना क्लैरिफाई करके दिया हुआ उन्होंने सिलेबस कि यार क्या पढ़ना मैं तुम्हें बता के दे रहा हूँ, आप वो पढ़ो. ठीक है? बट लोगों को लगता है कि मॉडर्न इंडिया, अच्छा बिपिन चंद्र पढ़नी है. ठीक है? एंड दे डू नॉट अंडरस्टैंड एनीथिंग. नो, एक्चुअली दे आर टेलिंग यू दैट व्हाट यू आर सपोज टू रीड. लाइक रीड द सेकंड सेंटेंस. ठीक है? द फ्रीडम, इंडियन फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल, and then the participation or the contributors and contributions from different parts of country. अब वो तो यार इंडियन फ्रीडम मूवमेंट लिख के भी अपना काम चला सकते थे, तो फिर दूसरी लाइन क्यों लिखी उन्होंने? ठीक है? देयर इज अ लॉजिक बिहाइंड दैट. I'll come to that aspect also. ठीक है? ये जीएस के लिए है, but I'm just trying to tell you that how come it's applicable even in general studies also, and that's why you should understand. So I think when it comes to modernity, there is a clarity in you. From which particular period you can find the beginning of modernity in India. So it's somewhere in 18th and 19th century. By no chance we can say in 16th century modernity started in India. Okay? So that clarity should be there. Okay? Just come out of it. If any doubt is there, you are most welcome to ask the question. Yes. Emergence of
democratic state.
when? In six.
Indication of modernity.
Yes, it's one indication of modernity. I do accept it. The rule of law. What is democracy? Rule of law only. Democracy और क्या है यार? Rule of law. The core idea in democracy is the rule of law, nothing else. ठीक है? Okay. Now the second part. Like so far, it's a brief. Yes. अब यार बहस करना चाहते तो मैं तो यही बोलूँगा कि स्टार्ट हो गया अभी भी. क्या आंसर होगा आपका? हो गया शुरू? नहीं हुआ ना? तो यार देखो, हम थोड़ा थियोरेटिकली भी चलते हैं. ठीक है ना? प्रैक्टिकली आप जाएंगे तो अभी तक मॉडर्निटी आ गई इंडिया में, जितना मैंने बताया ये सब. आपको दुनिया पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म में पहुंच गई है. ठीक है? पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म की बात करते हैं, हम अभी मॉडर्निटी सही से नहीं पहुंच पाए हैं. तो वो कुछ चीज़ें हैं जो हम थियोरेटिकली बात करते हैं. मॉडर्न इंडिया में बहुत फेक रहना है. ठीक है? जो हकीकत है वो लिखना नहीं है. मैं पहले ही बता रहा हूँ. यस. नहीं, I think in general, like first of all, I didn't tell you that one particular point can be really considered as a point from when modernity start, or modernity did start, right? Once you find that, okay, 3-4 features started coming, and that's why I just told you a bigger tenure in which modernity started. We can't say कि from this particular point the modernity start. वैसा होता तो I think 1773 is the best time to say that modernity start from 1773, because the acts are now there to govern on India, है ना? So I think we cannot say at any point of time कि okay, this is the beginning point of modernity. We can always say कि that transition had started going on. That's how we can convey this. Clear? Any more questions? Anybody? Fine. Now, when it comes to the modern Indian history, yes, we are not, I just told you, I conveyed this idea, what is modern India, मैंने बता दिया कुछ, ठीक है, अभी बाद में बताएंगे. And then history, I have already made it clear that what is history. So now it is modern Indian history. Now modern Indian history starts from the middle of 18th century. But whenever it comes to history, there are two more things that we have to keep in mind. The history writing, or let's say historians, and the sources. Now when it comes to paper 2, specifically modern India and modern world, the sources are very important. But though it does not play a very important role for us. Why? Because there is no confusion. There was no great amount of confusion for the sources, because we believe कि ठीक है यार, there are sources and sort of similar sources being used by everyone to give their statement, and in fact there is no confusion. I hope you remember I always used to tell you the story of E.H. Carr, a story which is mentioned by E.H. Carr, not story of E.H. Carr. Is, he talks about an accident, ठीक है, X and Y was there. ठीक है, X को एक दिन जो है उनको वो लगी, क्या तलब लगी. X जो है वो था, अल्कोहलिक था, ठीक है, और Y जो है वो स्मोकर था, एक चेन स्मोकर. तो एक दिन X पार्टी से वापस आ रहा था, Y को अचानक 12 बजे फील हुआ कि उसके पास सिगरेट्स खत्म हो गई हैं. तो Y जस्ट क्रॉसिंग द रोड in order to get cigarette, and X was totally drunken, was crossing the road by his car, and then he crashed Y, ठीक है, Y मर गया. अब सवाल है कि ये घटना किस पीरियड में हुई. दैट्स द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग. अगर ये एंशिएंट और मेडिवल में होती, खासकर एंशिएंट में, वी लाइक हिस्टोरियंस वुड हैव स्ट्रगल्ड टू प्रूव कि really this accident took place or not, or this accident really take place or not. ठीक है. In modern times, we won't debate on this particular issue that whether this accident took place or not. We will debate on this thing, what is the reason behind this accident. The questions are changing. In different period, different questions are there. So what approach we had in the ancient times, like the same approach we are not supposed to carry in the modern times. We need to change our approach. And that's how in ancient, as I do discuss, that sources are very important. Without referring sources, if you are writing the answer, you won't be able to impress the evaluator. Why? Because you won't be able to convey your ideas that influentially, okay, the way it was expected from you. But in modern, if you're referring all these documents like the government document or the newspaper and all these kind of things, this is not required. But in modern, one idea that really keeps a kind of or gives a greater influence, that's historiography. And what is historiography? It's nothing but the historians only. Okay? The historians, as you do know, that they themselves are coming from different backgrounds and most importantly from different schools, right? And that is undoubtedly leaving a great impact over history writing, and that's why we need to have a brief idea of the historiography of modern India. It's not very different. The same thing is there, but still I would like to discuss a little bit about them. So first, the first school is the imperial school. Imperial or the colonial school of history writing. Now, what is this school of history writing? This is a school of history writing which started by the Britishers. And after the Asiatic Society, they had started, after the establishment of Asiatic Society, they had started translating various books of past. And in fact, over the period, they came up with good amount of such translations. Mostly the people, those who were indulged in these kind of translation activities were the Orientalist people. Okay? They were known as Orientalist people. And I must say you that Orientalists were not very biased. Rather, these are the people very much influenced by the Indian culture. Obsessed कह सकते हैं जिनको Indian culture के साथ. They were very obsessed people. But then later on what happened, there are some some historians from this particular school itself, well, they were not naturally, they were not necessarily Orientalists. They had started writing about history of India, and while writing the history of India, undoubtedly they have followed the real process or the right process. That sources are there, the interpretation has been done, and a history has been written. But while doing this, simultaneously they were little biased also. Why biased? Because they had to prove their objectives. What objectives they had? They had the objectives to prove India as uncivilized and barbaric country. Got my point? But when it comes to these ideas, quite fit for the ancient times, they are the people even writing the history for modern India also. And not really them, but this school was even further continued with some alternative names such as liberal school, okay, neoliberal school, Cambridge School of History Writing, okay. So these are the various schools which are coming, and they are just carrying the same sort of ideas. And in fact, अभी तो आप लोग वो सारी किताबें पढ़ते ही नहीं है, ठीक है. There was a book, like we started reading that book, that's called as the Cambridge Economic History of India. This was the first volume and edited by Dharma Kumar. And this is the book which is written completely with this perspective. So there was a period when actually these kind of books were dominating in India, where the history has been, modern history of modern India has been interpreted with this colonial perspective, right? So there are many such books. Still there were many authors like Anil Seal and all, they have been writing with this, imperial perspective, or let's say, imperial and colonial perspective. So now try to understand my point, like what kind of history they must be writing. Like you can just apply your logic and you'll be able to understand that what kind of history they must be writing. Like in India, you all know that India was a colonized country. Okay? India was a colonized country. Now whenever it comes to colonization, now these people are not ready to accept that either it was a colonization, first thing. And the second thing, if they accept that it was a colonization, then they are not ready to accept any kind of negative impact of colonization. कितने एग्जाम्पल चाहिए मैं उतने दे सकता हूँ, ठीक है. सच एज ड्रेन ऑफ वेल्थ. हम हल्ला करते खूब जोर जोर से, अरे बहुत पैसा ले गए, बहुत पैसा ले गए. वो बोलते कहाँ ले गए यार, नहीं. तो बोला कि जो है पूरा कैलकुलेशन वगैरह किया गया, फिर बोला कि देखो इतना पैसा ले गए तुम. बोला कितना है आपके जीडीपी का? 2% तो है आपका ये, ठीक है. तो मैंने बोला, फिर उन्होंने बोला कि मैंने इतनी वैल्यूएबल सर्विसेज आपको प्रोवाइड की हैं. आप सोचिए कि अब लंदन से ब्यूरोक्रेट्स आते थे इंडिया में सर्व करने के लिए, है ना, समझ रहे हैं आप. लंदन से ब्यूरोक्रेट्स आते थे इंडिया में सर्व करने के लिए. बोले कि आप सोच के देख रहे कि वी हैव प्रोवाइडेड यू सच ए वैल्यूएबल सर्विसेज, एंड इफ यू चार्ज दिस मच यू आर क्रिएटिंग ए पैनिक, ठीक है. What is the logic of creating this panic? After giving so much valuable services, this we deserve, ठीक है. तो बोला कि ठीक है, ऐसा कुछ है नहीं. Let's say drain of deindustrialization. That they saying कि no, we didn't do anything, ठीक है. So that's their approach, that's their idea, and that's why you believe that this school is over now. Not correct, ठीक है. And in fact, if you think they have stopped writing with this approach, that's also incorrect. Still, they are great scholars. They have been trying to justify the colonialism. They are trying to oppose the nationalist ideas, which is talking about the exploitation and all. Like they are outrightly rejecting this. And of course, once the topics will come, we will discuss. Of course, our study will start from here. And in fact, still the ideas are coming and will include those ideas as well. Those who are still not accepting if there was any kind of exploitation of India or drain of wealth or commercialization of agriculture, etc., etc., etc. And सबसे मज़ेदार तो है उनका nationalism. वो किस तरीके से बताते कि nationalism क्या था इंडिया का, वो भी बताते हो, ठीक है. So this is the first school. But what I'm trying to convey here, wait a second. What I'm trying to convey here, that I hope you got the idea that what kind of history must be written by them. ठीक है. So it's not necessary that all the time you remember the name of historians, but you can understand the approach that they are following. ठीक है. Because in modern India, it's about the debate. For most of the thing you can find this debate is there. That okay, for every event you can find the debates are there, that whether it is like this or not. ठीक है. So of course, on multiple occasions we'll be keep on using the imperial and the colonial historiography, because this is one set of idea for the modern India. Yes.
Sir, is it only us in India that we believe that all the atrocities happen with us, or there are other people also who really believe and have sympathy regarding that? या फिर उनको बस लगता है कि उन्होंने अच्छा ही किया है पर उन्होंने कुछ गलत किया ही नहीं, बाहर के सारे लोग.
Well, देखो इंसान झूठ मतलब कितना बोलेगा यार, ठीक है. When it comes to colonization, I think the atrocities of colonization is something which is accepted throughout the world. तो सबको पता है. So when there is a colonization, there must be some meaning. and I told you that colonization was the result of the mercantilist policy. तो उसका कुछ ना कुछ तो impact होगा ही, और होगा तो अच्छा खासा ही होगा. Exploitation तो था, तो मना थोड़ी कर. नहीं भी था तो लिखना है कि था. बात खत्म है. ठीक है, ठीक है. Okay. So this is one school. Now it comes to the second school. Now the second school, as usual, is the nationalist school. Now again, it's not very tough to understand what might be their agenda of history writing. At one hand, the European scholars, not European scholars, sorry. At one hand, the imperial scholars are saying we didn't do any such sort of exploitation and all. On the other hand, the nationalist people are coming up, okay? And these people are saying they are trying to exaggerate everything, okay? Like they are saying कि no, there was great exploitation. अगर वो 2 रुपये लेके गए तो हम 4 रुपये बताएंगे, ठीक है? So of course this is the approach. So there are some nationalist people also, and in fact, like in most of the debates, you can find that the nationalist people are coming up with very important ideas. And in fact, wherever you can find the debate in modern India, we'll find that the arguments given by the nationalist scholars, like they are really very important. They are the people talking about deindustrialization. They are the people talking about drain of wealth. They are the people talking about commercialization of agriculture. Okay? They are the people talking about Indian freedom movement or the various acts passed in India. What are the flaws with them? So I think nationalist people, like during the or let's say while writing the history of freedom of struggle or Indian freedom struggle, undoubtedly the nationalists must be playing very important role. But what flaws I have told you with the nationalist historians, that continues here also. What is the flaw? They have been trying to exaggerate the things, okay? And you understand that what kind of exaggeration was there. Undoubtedly, they are sometimes, they are sometimes cutting, or they have been ignoring certain aspects. Why? Because they are ignoring these aspects in order to prove that actually the colonization has much negative impacts. That's why they have been doing so. So this is how I can say that there was a nationalist school as well, and this school is undoubtedly still writing, and this school is still writing, okay? And this school is trying to give new ideas and the new perspectives. But here I would like to tell you one thing. Listen it very carefully. Like right now, okay, right now, it's not right now. It's maybe in the current period. You should give little bit importance to this school. At least when you are writing the answers in modern India, if your answers are a bit inclined towards this, there is no problem. In fact, it should be inclined towards that. Let's say deindustrialization. Okay? Deindustrialization is a debate, and most of the time, there is no conclusion that whether it happened or not. Whereas the people writing with this perspective, they are also giving solid arguments, and they are proving that actually in India there was no deindustrialization. But still, if you are writing in your answer that deindustrialization did not take place, though it's not the conclusion, so undoubtedly it's not giving a good impression. ठीक है? तो लिखना पड़ेगा. ठीक है? अब लिखना पड़ेगा. आप थोड़ी ना प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं मनमोहन सिंह की जाके ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट में बोल के आ गए कि जो है हमने वी लर्न सो मेनी थिंग्स फ्रॉम इंग्लिश, और बाहर इंडियन पार्लियामेंट में हंगामा हो गया उसके बाद. ठीक है, ऐसा कैसा बोल दिया आपने. ठीक है, तो वैसा नहीं है. ठीक है, थोड़ा इंक्लिनेशन हो तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है उसमें. ठीक है. देन इट कम्स टू थर्ड, दैट्स द मार्क्सिस्ट स्कूल. ठीक है. Now you all understand about this school. What is this Marxist school? Now they are not biased like them or like them. Okay? They have their own ways of understanding the things. Okay? And that's how they are giving a new interpretation of Indian history, specifically the modern one. Undoubtedly, they have worked a lot for ancient India, for medieval India, and in fact, throughout the medieval India, you can find the dominance of this school only. Aligarh school is nothing but the replica or a kind of क्या बोलेंगे उसको आप, एक उसका वर्जन है. ठीक है, जो लिखता है उसको. ठीक है. So we can say कि this is the school which is very much influential even in the modern history also. So when it comes to modern history, in the modern while writing the modern history, like these people have given a new interpretation, and I must tell you that these are very interesting things they have written about the Indian history, or interesting interpretations they have given for Indian history, such as when you talk about nationalism, such as when you talk about the let's say all those debates that I had been discussing, such as when it comes to interpretation of Mahatma Gandhi, such as it's about the various movements launched by Mahatma Gandhi, such as the nature and character of the peasant movements, the workers movement, right, the all those all India movements such as non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience, and all these movements, they have given everywhere that they have given a new perspective to all these movements, and they have their own ways of understanding. Like for nationalist people, during that particular period, everybody was influenced with the idea of nationalism, and that's why all their acts were basically according to the idea of nationalism. Now Marxist people are saying, no way, this is incorrect. Okay? It's not only about nationalism. Some other ideas were still there. Okay? सबसे पहले इन लोगों ने कांग्रेस, they declared Congress as a bourgeois party, ठीक है, and they said कि Congress was not making the decisions only keeping in mind nationalism. They had been making the decisions while keeping in mind some other things also, such as whether they would get the funds from capitalist people or not. Okay? So there are many things when it comes to the interpretation of let's say civil disobedience movement. I'm just giving one example that after the civil disobedience movement, after 1 year this movement was suddenly suspended. I hope if you have really read something or little bit about modern Indian history, in that case you all know the civil disobedience movement was going on very successfully. And 1 year, like government had to surrender, and that's why they invited the round table. They declared round table conference and invited all the leaders. Like in the first round table conference, he did not go, Gandhi. And in the second round table conference, suddenly he decided to go. अब मार्क्सिस्ट लोग इधर दिमाग चलाते इधर बोलते क्या हुआ ऐसा, ठीक है, तो बोलते हैं पक्का कोई ऑफर आया होगा, ठीक है. एंड नाउ अकॉर्डिंग टू देम द कैपिटलिस्ट सेक्शंस ऑफ इंडिया, ठीक है, और द बिजनेसमैन ऑफ इंडिया, दे कन्विंस गांधी जी टू पार्टिसिपेट इन दिस मूवमेंट, पार्टिसिपेट इन राउंड टेबल कॉन्फ्रेंस, that the civil disobedience movement could be suspended. Whereas for past 1 year, they had been participating in this movement and they had been perpetually facing losses in their business, and now they were not in a mood to face any loss, and that's why they wanted a peace, sort of a peaceful environment in India, and that's why they said this. Whether it was true or not, that I do not know, but these people are giving this kind of interpretation of everything. Okay? So basically they came up with a different kind of interpretation, and it's a very popular interpretation also in the modern India, okay? And in fact we have been using, because like economic aspects are coming on various occasions, and that's why we have been using them very frequently, okay? On different occasions we have been using them, and that's the reason because of what we can say ki yes, this is another school like which is really very influential in modern times, okay? Fourth, and this is called as the another school that came up after 1980s के बाद 1986-87, I think Ranjit Guha had been writing the subaltern studies. The first volume came in 1886-87, I guess, ठीक है, of subaltern studies का जो पहला volume है वो आता है. And then in India, of course, this is not something which is like, which is a new initiative in India. Undoubtedly, subaltern school is not an Indian school. Rather, it is being inspired by one European scholar called as Antonio Gramsci. And Gramsci, sometimes we'll discuss about Gramsci, okay? Like he gave this theory of mental hegemony, okay? And in fact, on various occasions, we'll try to apply this idea of mental hegemony. And in fact, if we really need to understand colonization, I think the idea of mental hegemony works a lot here. If you really want to understand Mahatma Gandhi, in that case also we need to understand the mental hegemony. So we will discuss about sometimes, and I will discuss about Antonio Gramsci, like and his theory of mental hegemony. What is important here, Antonio Gramsci says that there are 2% people ruling over rest 98% people. If I'll try to simplify it, it's correct or not correct? I think 2% उन्होंने ज़्यादा बोल दिया था. I think 1% people are ruling over rest 99% people. ठीक है? And when it comes to reading the history, we are reading the history of 99% or 1%? 1%. है ना? This is the irony. Ideally, we are supposed to read the history of 99%, but it's so unfortunate that we have been reading the history of that 1%. Are you guys able to understand this point or not? Understood the point? We are reading the history of just 1%, okay, not 99%. So he simply appealed historians, why not to write the history of rest 99%? And that really gave a new turn or twist to the history writing, not only in the world, but also in the, not only in the world, but even in India also. You can find a greater impact of this, and that's how you can find that the subaltern school is becoming very influential. Now, what is this subaltern school? The subaltern school simply said ki why to read the history of only elite sections of the society or the bourgeois leader of the society, why not to read about the masses as well. And the funda was very simple. Let me tell you, the funda was very simple. They had just started coming up with certain questions, and the questions were really very influential questions, I must say. They said ki when you talk about, let's say, nationalism, okay? So the moment it comes to nationalism, earlier in what way nationalism was discussed, let me tell you, Indian nationalism. So people are saying ki look, Western education came, then press is coming, media is coming in India, okay? The bourgeois leaders are coming, okay? They started writing about the drain of wealth and other things in the newspaper, and that's how nationalism came into India. That's one way of understanding nationalism. But the moment I have been saying about this, like, the press, Western education, and then drain of wealth theory, and all these kind of things, do you really think that the common masses would be able to understand all these things? Was it, was it actually within their potential to understand drain of wealth theory? मैं अभी आपको बता रहा हूँ कि मैं आप में से अभी एक बार drain of wealth theory बता के मैं जाऊँगा, आधे लोगों को समझ में नहीं आएगा कि था क्या drain of wealth theory, ठीक है? Because there are some कैलकुलेशन, रेमिटेंस की जब हम बात करते हैं, रेमिटेंस मुझे अभी भी पता है कि इसमें से बहुत लोग हिस्ट्री पढ़ के बैठे हैं, बट इफ आई आस्क अबाउट द रेमिटेंस, ठीक है, तो आप में से आधे लोगों को रेमिटेंस का पता नहीं होगा कि क्या था वो रेमिटेंस, जिसको लेके बहुत डिबेट है इरफान हबीब और इन सारे लोगों में, ठीक है? तो रेमिटेंस, तो बेसिकली व्हेन इट कम्स टू द इंडियन नेशनलिज्म विच इज प्राइमरली बेस्ड ऑन द आइडिया ऑफ ड्रेन ऑफ वेल्थ, like it was beyond the understanding of the common masses. So it means that this nationalism was covering just 2% people of India. इतने लोग लिटरेट होंगे, चलो आप अगर काउंटर करते तो मैं बढ़ा देता हूँ, थोड़ा 3% कर देते. तो what kind of nationalism we are talking about which included only 3% people? Is it nationalism of India? एक nationalism, हम एक ऐसे nationalism की बात करें जो सिर्फ 3% लोगों में है. यार अगर मैं बोलता कि 97% को इंक्लूड करें तो एक बार की हम मान भी लेते हैं कि नहीं, ये नेशनलिज्म हो सकता है. बट ए नेशनलिज्म which is incorporating only 3% people, how come it could be called as nationalism? So they said कि यार it is not the complete nationalism, and that's how they came up with the idea of two parallel nationalisms. ठीक है, ये बोला कि दो nationalisms है, एक ये 3% वाला nationalism है और एक nationalism 97% वाला भी है, ठीक है? And they said कि these are two parallel nationalisms which are going on, and of course the reason because of what Mahatma Gandhi is great, because he was capable of merging these two nationalisms, ठीक है? तो वो है, अनडाउटेडली उसको कोई डिस्कार्ड नहीं कर सकते कि उन्होंने ये काम किया, और मुझे लगता है कि इट इज़ वन ऑफ द ग्रेटेस्ट अचीवमेंट ऑफ महात्मा गांधी, ठीक है? सो दैट्स हाउ वी कैन से कि दिस इज लाइक वन थिंग दैट वी कैन डिस्कस, दिस इज वन आइडिया लाइक दे केम अप विथ, and in fact they started talking about this subaltern nationalism, and it's a very interesting idea they came up with, ठीक है? That's how we can talk about MG, Mahatma Gandhi. Now Mahatma Gandhi was presented, right? Mahatma Gandhi क्या हो गया है ही भाई, मैं तो सलमान खान बोलता हूँ उनको, ठीक है? इंडियन फ्रीडम हीरो, इंडियन फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल के सलमान खान थे वो, ठीक है? बाल दोनों को नहीं है, ठीक है? ऐसा ही. तो चलिए, महात्मा गांधी हैज़ बीन पोर्ट्रेड बाय मोस्ट ऑफ द राइटर्स, स्पेसिफिकली बिपिन चंद्र, वो फिदा रहते थे उनके ऊपर एकदम, महात्मा गांधी के ऊपर. उनको लगता था कि यही है जो कुछ है, ठीक है? मतलब मुझे हो तो नथुलाल की तरह हो जैसी होती है ना, वैसे ही फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल हो तो गांधी जी हो, बस और कुछ नहीं है. सो ही इज़ राइटिंग कि गांधी जी, मतलब होता ना, जहाँ गांधी जी खड़े होते थे लाइन वहीं से शुरू हो जाती थी. उनका वो वाला था, यही कहते हैं. मतलब गांधी जी ने एक बार कहा आके खड़े होकर कि चलो चलते हैं, और उसके बाद मतलब लाखों की संख्या में लोग जो है वो आने लगते थे. ऐसा करके उन्होंने वो गांधी जी को प्रेजेंट किया. वाई टू अंडरस्टैंड गांधी जी लाइक इन दिस वे, द सबाल्टर्न हिस्टोरियंस आर जेन्युइनली आस्किंग ए क्वेश्चन, वाई नॉट टू अंडरस्टैंड गांधी विद द अदर पर्सपेक्टिव, ठीक है? Like why did people prefer to follow Gandhi? ये भी तो हो सकता है ना कि why did they prefer to follow Gandhi? Why can't we, like, why should we believe always that Gandhi ji had a charismatic personality that whenever he invited people to join any movement and people just went and joined the movement? Like they are saying कि that alternative perspective would be also there, कि people must be looking some benefits with Gandhi ji, and that's why they have been going with Gandhi ji. And in fact there are several such studies that will undoubtedly will discuss while discussing Gandhi ji, that they had been looking for their own benefits, and that's why they participated in Gandhian movement. And the moment their interest got fulfilled, they came out of the movements also. This also happened. And there are not 1, 2 or 3 examples. There are many such examples, and that's how the historians have started giving a new perspective and a dimension to understand modern India. And they said, why not to understand, and most importantly, why to say that only Mahatma Gandhi was responsible for Indian freedom, right? Mahatma Gandhi alone was not responsible for Indian freedom movement, that is true. And in fact, you all understand that after 1930, Mahatma Gandhi was not playing any major role as such in Indian politics, that is true. एक ऑथर लिखते हैं कि महात्मा गांधी घर के वो बूढ़े दादाजी है जिनकी इज्जत तो करनी चाहिए, ठीक है, बट बात नहीं सुननी चाहिए, ठीक है, एक हिस्टोरियन लिखते हैं इसके बारे में, ठीक है. तो आप समझ रहे हैं कि गांधी जी वॉज नाउ बीइंग परसीव्ड इन ए डिफरेंट वे. And in fact, you can really understand the Gandhi status in Haripura and Tripuri. Subhas, a young fellow, ठीक है, गांधी जी तो बहुत ही छोटे थे, ठीक है, एंड उनकी आइडियोलॉजी भी थी जो पॉपुलर आइडियोलॉजी नहीं थी कांग्रेस के अंदर. तो लाइक इवन दो ही मैनेज टू डिफीट द गांधीन कैंडिडेट. गांधी सेकंड दूसरी बार में चिढ़ी गए थोड़ा सा, ठीक है, यार ऐसा कैसे हो गया यार, इसने पहली बार हराया ठीक है, दूसरी बार भी हरा दे, तो थोड़ी तो वो थी, ठीक है. तो आप समझ रहे गांधी जी वॉज नॉट बाय दैट टाइम वेरी इन्फ्लुएंशियल एज सच इन इवन इन कांग्रेस ऑल्सो, इवन इन कांग्रेस ऑल्सो, एंड इंडियन फ्रीडम मूवमेंट तो छोड़ ही दीजिए. हाँ, लाइक व्हेन इट कम्स टू 1942, सो अगेन गांधी इज कमिंग इन टू पिक्चर वंस अगेन, ठीक है, व्हेन ही लॉन्च दिस quit India movement, then he's coming into power. Matlab now again he became bit influential in India, but in between you won't find that Gandhiji actually had been enjoying any power as such. So that's how Indian freedom movement is this. In Indian freedom movement is there. So when it comes to Indian freedom movement, I think role of Subhas, role of Ambedkar, then role of many other leaders, those who are not being discussed a lot, and I think we should talk a lot about them because yes, it is important. Yes, their roles are very important, and in fact, at any point of time, we cannot ignore it. So basically, in fact, now the role of peasants, the role of workers, the role of women, all these questions had really become important, and that's why just go and check out the questions of the modern India, which are these days, and not only in optional, but even in the general studies. So we have actually come out from that, understanding of history what we had 30 years back, and now we have started dealing with the history, specifically of the modern Indian history, with a completely different perspective, and you should understand the history with this perspective. So now if you are focusing a lot on Mahatma Gandhi, पहले Mahatma Gandhi, undoubtedly he is important, yeah. There are so many chairs, मतलब Mahatma Gandhi के नाम पर in the Western universities also, but that does not mean कि Indian freedom was all about him. Indian freedom struggle was not only about him, but Indian freedom struggle was about many other people, but about the masses also, okay? And undoubtedly, the subaltern historians, the way they have been asking this question, who made Gandhi as the Gandhi? The moment I say Gandhi, you always imagine? अच्छा नहीं, राहुल गांधी you don't imagine. Fine. ठीक है, मुझे लगा राहुल गांधी आप बोलेंगे. महात्मा गांधी. Why do you imagine only Mahatma Gandhi? Why don't you imagine Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi or Priyanka Gandhi? Because he is the Gandhi. Okay? So the moment I am saying Gandhi and then you imagine the Gandhi, so who made him the Gandhi? It was the masses who followed Gandhi. They made them actually him the Gandhi. Otherwise, he was a normal person also. Okay? Undoubtedly, he had some great talents. I'm not denying this. But at the same time, masses had also used Gandhiji according to them. So everything is there. Of course, everything will be clear only once we'll reach to Mahatma Gandhi. So basically, this is the last school. And this school is very influential right away. Okay? And that's why while reading the history, we have to keep in mind this particular school because your questions are also much under the influence of this particular school. Right? तो ये सारी चीज़ें हमें ध्यान रखनी है, and that's how we are going to study modern India, right? So I think like everything is clear here as well, right?
Sir, are there any Indian historians from the imperial school also?
हाँ क्यों नहीं, अनिल सील, अभी तो मैंने बोला कि अनिल सील है, और भी बहुत लोग हैं. आइडियाज़ पे सब दोनों तरीके के एग्जाम्पल्स मिलेंगे यार. ये आइडियाज़ वैसा नहीं है, नेशनलिज्म वाइज नहीं है, ठीक है, कि अगर इंग्लैंड यूरोपियन है तो वो इंपीरियल आइडियोलॉजी से लिखेगा और अगर इंडियन है तो वो इस आइडियोलॉजी से लिखेगा. ये कोई ज़रूरी रिवीजन थोड़ी है. सोच तो यहाँ के भी लोग तो ब्रिटिश हो ही सकते हैं ना. ओके, सो दैट्स इट. ठीक है, सो दैट्स इट अबाउट ऑल दीज आइडियाज. ठीक है, सो नाउ वी हैव टू एंटर इनटू एन अनदर एस्पेक्ट्स. ठीक है, सो देयर इज ए